Our guest this episode lives in Point Reyes, California. She's a singer, guitarist, pianist, voice teacher, choir director, and community organizer, as well as a longtime yoga teacher. She leads a choir of up to 50 people that absolutely delights and inspires the community with their performances. During our conversation, she reveals that she's more interested in singing as a path to personal healing and transformation than as a performance-oriented activity. This becomes a main area of focus in our discussion. She's also the co-founder and executive director of the nonprofit Sound Orchard. In her own words, our guest believes that making music together can help create a more healthy, vibrant, and connected community. We are pleased to welcome our guest to this episode, Devi Daly. Welcome to Meaningful Musical Conversations, where words are music, hearts are melodies, and harmony is our vision. I'm Jill Meunier.
And I'm Daniel Townsend. Thank you so much again for tuning in, and I hope you're all having a great day so far. To my right here in the room, I have Devi Daly. How's it going today?
It's going well. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks for coming out. Yeah.
Thank you so much. First of all, I want to apologize for having a really nasal-sounding voice today. I'm just getting over a cold, but nonetheless, here I am. Thank goodness. So, Devi, I just want to kind of share with our listeners how we originally met. I met you like 2 years ago.
Yeah, at a Rhiannon workshop. So, workshop with the wonderful improvisational singing instructor, day long here in Sebastopol. Mm-hmm. We just resonated. I heard your singing voice, your improvising, and I just was blown away. And then I remember we had some really nice, easy, fluid conversations in between on the breaks and stuff, and we have all this stuff in common in our lives.
Yes, including yoga. And when I discovered that you were a yoga teacher as well, even though, listeners, I'm no longer doing that, but I did for 25 years, I was really excited. And also to hear that you were into yin yoga, which we'll discuss later, perhaps.
Okay. Yes.
Because I'm really happy about that. I think the world needs more yin yoga. But anyway, so we did that Rhiannon workshop, and it was all improvisational singing. And Rhiannon is actually, just for people who don't know, used to sing with Voicestra, Bobby McFerrin's group. Mm-hmm. I think she's touring with him again now, actually. But so that kind of brings us to your interest in music and what you're doing musically.
Yes.
I am actually curious to know where you grew up, because you're living in Marin now, but...
Right, West Marin. Mm-hmm. And I was born in New Jersey and grew up in New Jersey. Oh. Yeah.
I grew up in New York, upstate New York.
Oh, okay.
And we went to the Jersey Shore all the time.
Oh, Jersey Shore is where I grew up.
Oh, really?
Asbury Park.
Oh, my gosh. Okay,
yeah.
Bruce Springsteen's town.
So actually a small town next to Asbury Park, which is called Ocean Grove, and it's called God's Square Mile is its nickname, and it's run by a Methodist organization. And my family ended up there. My parents were split up since I was young, and my father had some kind of a deal there. He was never religious. He grew up Catholic and was beaten by the nuns and hated religion. And so we were not in there. We didn't get into that town because of being religious people, but we really enjoyed being there, and it was surprisingly just a wonderful place to be a teenager, because there was a lot of resources and a lot of things for kids to do to keep them out of, from being bad. So we used to do these teen shows with music and dancing in the summers. It was a really good thing to do to be creative together. And I met some of my first harmony singing friends doing that, who are still my friends, the twins, my two twin friends, and their older sister. And they got me going singing harmony. They were like show tune kinds of people, and I have never been too much of a show tune person, but they they can memorize things like crazy. And
Wow. Oh, how fun.
yeah,
So you were a teenager back then.
I was a teenager during that time, and before that, I was in church choir. Was really my first singing. Singing is my main thing, and I also play instruments, several of them not very well, but probably guitar the most. And I started singing in a church choir that my mother brought my sister and I to every week. And I guess we were kind of standouts in the church choir. And my sister and I sing beautifully together. And she's not in a musical creative field as an adult, but still when we sing together, it's just like there's like something magical about our harmony. And somebody picked that up when we were 5 and 6 years old. Wow. And we got hired to sing in a commercial. Oh, wow. And so I can say that I've been a professional singer since I was 6 because I got paid, and I have a scan of this $30 check
Nice.
that I got with my name on it. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Did you end up like spending that money on anything in particular?
Right.
You know?
I don't recall.
Yeah.
But that would have been nice, huh?
Wow, that's a fascinating story. That's really cool. So I might actually just skip to this right now because now I'm dying to ask you like what your first musical memory was, because now I'm thinking it might have to do with that. Or at least big significant sort of musical memory that really kind of clicks in your brain.
That's an early one, but I think before that was my little toddler piano that I got as a gift, as I think as a Christmas or a birthday gift. I don't remember.
Right.
But that's probably my earliest musical memory, is how I just was so excited to have this thing, and I would spend like hours at it. And that's how the story my parents tell now is that's how they knew that there was something there musically. It was just how I would not get bored of playing around with this piano.
Those little pianos like tell a lot of good stories, you know,
Yeah.
like a lot of people grow up on those. And you can get them now for so cheap. So if your kids
That's
are,
true.
you know, might be time to give them a little small piano, see what
Yeah,
happens.
exactly. Yes. Oh, wow. And so I actually saw that you played piano at Rutgers. Did I read that?
Yeah, so that was my minor in college was music, and piano was, I played piano and studied music theory, music history, etc. And I played piano all growing up, classical piano, and as well as singing.
Mm-hmm. Did you enjoy practicing? Did you put much time into that? Or?
Oh yeah, I used to practice a lot. They never had. My parents never had to force me to practice.
That's
I was
awesome.
very self-motivated.
Yeah.
And you sang and played piano kind of back then? Were you trying to do that?
You know, it's interesting that, like, if I could have been the parent and redone it, I would have chosen I would not have, like, putting a child in front of classical music to me is sort of like not the right route to go. And just that children have so much creativity in them, and I wish I'd been learning chords and how to accompany myself and how to improvise, and instead I learned this very rigid system of classical music and Mozart and such, and it gave me something I'm incredibly grateful for, which is this familiarity with the piano keyboard that's like my fingers just know how to play piano, and I have and it helps me with music theory, and it helps me to understand music because I have that big foundation. And then singing was separate from piano. Singing was done in choir. It was done on the stage in like musicals and with my friends. And so I didn't start to combine those two things until I got a guitar and started playing guitar at age 17.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a great age to start playing guitar, and you're sitting there and, you know, you can play for your friends, or when you're depressed in your room all by yourself or whatever.
Why do you think there's so many guitarists? Including me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was that like for you playing guitar when you first started?
It was difficult because guitar still to this day is not a natural instrument for me. My fingers don't wrap around in that way. Like, I'm still kind of a 3-chord wonder. even though I've gotten a lot more practice at playing my 3 chords, and I use the capo liberally because I don't play a lot of complex chords or anything. But my rhythm, according to bands I've played in, is really good. So as long as I can do the chords with my fingers, I've got really good rhythm. And so just being able to sing and have something accompanying my voice was really pretty amazing. And to be able to like suddenly cross that bridge where like, okay, I know how to play well enough that I can sing at the same time, and it's not like some big effort to make those things happen when it just clicks, that moment.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
What kind of songs were you singing back then? What was your repertoire like that?
Oh, what I was into in college was when I really started playing a lot, and I was singing at campfires. I was involved in some like environmentalist activist circles that I was one of the people who would sing and lead songs at the campfire for like Earth Firsters and people doing activist work. So I had a whole set of songs that along those lines that I haven't played any of them in quite a while.
Neat.
Yeah.
Wow.
Movement music.
Mm-hmm. Cool. It kind of reminds me of, the idea of musicians as being leaders and, activists in certain ways.
Yeah.
So you were talking about being an environmentalist, and I just do happen to know that you got back from Burning Man recently.
Yes.
I don't know.
On Monday.
Yeah, so you're spending a whole, week out in the desert.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, more than a week.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a new thing in my life. Burning Man is not something I had any interest in like 5 years ago, but a lot of things changed in my life 4 years ago with relationship shifting, and so there's a whole lot of new things that I'm interested in that I didn't used to be.
Sure, absolutely. Well, is there a cool music community out in Burning Man? I've never been, so I'm not very familiar with.
There is there's some stuff, but it hasn't, like for me, I bring a guitar, like the 2 years I've gone, I bring my instruments and they don't come out of the case. It's just, for me, hasn't been an inspiring musical environment. Unfortunately, because there's a lot of this electronic music going on that is in the background, and so there's other things that I do there. That's not one of my musical happy places. I have other musical happy places.
Yeah, understood completely. Yeah, I was just curious about that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good question.
I think if you were going to seek out jazz, like there's 70,000 people there, and there's camps for anything you might be interested in. So if you were going to seek out, I know there's a bluegrass camp, and I haven't heard of a jazz camp, but I'll bet there's one.
I know there is one actually.
Okay,
There you go. Yeah.
at least one.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So yeah, speaking of Burning Man, and I think about change and transformation, you're involved in something called transformational singing.
Yeah.
I am so fascinated with that concept, that idea, and I would love to hear you tell us about that.
Yeah, that's kind of the it ties in with yogic chanting, and it ties in with vocal improv, and so it's, I mean, and even the work that I do with West Marin Choir is also transformational, and it's kind of based on this idea of getting to this place as a community, as a culture where musicians and singers are not these other people. They're not like these professionals. Yeah. They're us.
I love
and
that.
Each of us has a voice that is meant to sing and meant to be heard. And there's amazingly just so much shame to overcome about our voices, that we're not good enough, and that's that our voice is not welcome in places, or and when with the people that I work with, there's stories, I hear similar stories many times about someone was told by their teacher when they were 8 years old or something that their voice is terrible and they shouldn't sing anymore. they're maybe told by their mother or someone who heard them in the shower when they thought they were alone. And these kinds of things, and sometimes the person who says it, they're just joking because it's some weird part of our culture that we insult each other's voices and then it's supposed to be funny, right? But children a lot of time don't get that humor, and they will carry it for their entire lives, and they will stop singing until they are 65 years old, retired in Point Reyes, ready to find some community and ready to let something go, let that shame go, and that's when they come to our choir.
Wow.
And so we have a lot of people in that situation, and it's such a huge joy for me to, I mean, I wish it could happen earlier in life, that they didn't have to spend that many decades not singing, but how wonderful it is to give someone that, like, I visualize the choir as like a bed. It's like a comfy bed that they get to come into.
Oh,
and it's
wow.
just like, because there's this cushion of voices, of other voices that helps you to stay in tune, that helps you to feel confident. And
It's totally a team effort too.
and it's a team effort.
You all feel part of that community together, just
Yeah,
singing together.
yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend to anyone who hasn't tried a choir, find a choir somewhere. Oh my gosh, like that's the whole reason I started singing too, is I was scared to death to sing. I knew I sounded
Really?
terrible.
Oh my
yeah, and I
gosh.
did. Trust me.
I'm shocked,
But
Daniel.
no, joint like almost being not forced to, but I didn't want to take PE for a third year in a row in high school, so choir was the only other option, and so much fun. Like just being part of that community and like just not being afraid so much to just open up. You know?
Yeah.
Did you find that happened for you pretty easily, like once you
Yeah.
got started?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. Just within the first week or so, I was like, all right, this is how it's gonna be. I get it. And
That's
yeah,
so cool.
there's other people in my boat too, you know, that weren't really singers, and we just figured it out as we went along. So
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one piece of the transformational singing is the choir work. And then there's also kind of a different level, like singing with other voices so that it's a soft entry into singing, and then to actually do more solo singing and improvisational singing and like welcome whatever creative direction your voice wants to go in.
Yeah.
That's another piece of it. And so when I do workshops and that kind of thing, I give people some tools and maybe some, like raga scales are a good thing to work with along those lines, which you don't have to know anything about ragas to do it, but just to introduce this set of notes that has a certain sound to it. And then to have people be able to improvise on those notes is it's surprisingly easy and effective. And so and getting in a group process with this where one person like is brave and does something to improvise that, you know, sometimes it's good if it doesn't actually sound very good, like the first person who goes, because then the other people they're like,
Feel
oh, I can,
confident.
if they can do it, I can do it.
totally.
And everyone's so supportive of each other in these groups we create. It's really safe. And so it's such heart-opening work for everybody, and for me especially. It's like really, it's work that I love to do, and I love holding this kind of space. I'm way more of like a musical space holder and group leader than I am a performer. I'm actually a little weird about performing.
Yeah. I'm wanting to go two directions right now, but I'm going to pick one.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
We'll go to both.
yeah, I'll try to remember the other one. But I really would love it if you would share with us the raga scale. Would you demonstrate a little bit of raga scale? This is not a performance.
Sure, yeah. This one, the names of them, it'll come to me in a second. There's several different scales, and you know, there's scales that correlate with our minor and our major and all these others that make them sound more ethnic. And it's not just a scale, it's like how certain notes are emphasized and milked and tension is carried in certain places. And I'm not super well versed in all of that. That's like a great big area of study. But just the simplest one that is the first raga that I learned, the first raga scale that I learned through Ann Dyer. I don't know if you...
I actually took
I've
a workshop with her at California Jazz Conservatory.
Yeah, I took a few workshops with her, and she's amazing and inspiring to me. Yeah. And so this one goes, just the notes are, hopefully I'll start in a good place. Sa, yeah. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa. Sa, ni, da, pa, ma, ga, re, sa. And it has the flat too, which is
Very
like,
nice.
yeah.
Not super Western there.
Tricky to get,
Yeah.
tricky to hit maybe initially. Did you find that it was challenging for your ear to find that initially, or?
Yeah, that's not actually, Anne starts with that, and I don't find that to be one of the easiest ones to start with when I lead a group. I have a different one that's more just minor key, but that's one of my favorites to play around with.
Neat. That is beautiful. Wow. One interesting thing, one note is that one of the reasons why I took that workshop with Anne is because she's also a longtime yoga teacher.
Yeah.
So that was just kind of another interesting thing. And she actually started out as a jazz singer and then went to basically studying Indian music. So
Yeah, and she did maybe the opposite path of you, that you went from
yeah, exactly,
yoga
exactly.
to music, and she, I think, if I know right, her path, it's kind of more music to yoga.
This is true. Yeah, it's kind of odd because I think, typically people might go in the other direction. Not the one that I did, but yeah, it's happened to me all my life.
And I'm doing both. I have a yoga career and a music career that are both sort of competing for my time and attention right now. And I love them both, and I don't want to let go of one of them, so I just keep them both going.
Yeah.
Ah.
That's so cool. So, I am always fascinated by the intersection of yoga and creativity. And I'm wondering if you could say something about that. Like, does yoga support, in what ways might yoga support, or parts of yoga, aspects of yoga support kind of the unfolding of creativity or helping people get in touch with that source energy?
One of the best ways that it works for me is just to get my blocks out of the way. It's kind of a clearing mechanism, and to do a nice juicy yoga practice, and just the fact that I just feel like a clear vessel afterward, that I can do anything and be my best self for it.
I totally get that.
And get the layers of tension out of the way.
Yeah. Well, it seems from what I found was oftentimes things would come up in Shavasana, like ideas would come.
Yes,
in corpse
that
pose.
happens for sure. Yeah,
and especially if there's been kind of a nice wind down, if it's been an active class. And I see a lot of times classes these days, there's very little, if sometimes no Shavasana, or people leave 3 minutes or something at the very end of the class, and it's been a very active class. And when I see that, I think, okay, well, yeah, people are working their bodies, but it's a little bit disappointing for me to see that, because that's really where a lot of the magic happens in the last, even just minimum of 10 minutes of Shavasana.
I struggle with that too as a yoga teacher, that it's in my years in the yoga business, I've seen classes go from a standard of 90 minutes. Now it's more like a standard of an hour. So when I teach, I can't really do a 10-minute Shavasana in an hour-long class. It's too much of the class. So even I love Shavasana and that time when ideas come and you clear out so much. But I'm cutting them down to about 5 minutes these days. And hearing you say that, I'm like, oh, maybe I should bring them back up to 10.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of taught back in the day that, it really did have to be like a minimum of 10 for like all the magic to happen. And as a yin teacher, even with yin yoga, about, what happens to the body and the meridians and when someone comes out of a pose. But I guess also there's so much focus on doing in our culture right now.
Yes.
Maybe that's one of the reasons why I love yin, is because it's, this as opposed to the yang yoga or yang styles where it's very active. Of course, it's all relative, but there is so much focus on doing and producing and accomplishing, at least, I think in our country. And so I love the idea of yin yoga and restorative, and not just that women need that, but men too, to really stay in balance from the overdoing. But it is an issue. Like the classes are now an hour instead of an hour and a half.
Yeah, because there's so much to do.
Well, because people want to make money in their yoga studios too, and if you can squeeze in more classes, so it's partly like a financial thing.
Yeah,
Of course.
Really.
So Shavasana, is that correct?
Corpse pose, yeah.
Corpse pose? Okay, I was going to ask because I'm not much on the yoga train. So
yeah, thank you
just
for
to get
asking that.
a little clarification.
Shavasana is the time of rest that happens at the end of pretty much any yoga class you go to. You lie down on your back and do nothing, and for many people, it's the best part of the class.
Yeah.
I mean, that does sound nice. I could probably do that later today.
Like right
That
now.
does sound great. Yeah, no. So it's kind of like a meditative,
A meditative time to just integrate everything you've done
very
and
nice.
pause.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And that's being left out now. I see.
Yeah, and because there's so much focus when a lot of times in our work or even in our yoga practice, you're really focusing on something in particular. And then in Shavasana, you may start by focusing on something, but then in the end you let go and you just let go so that we allow ourselves to just completely let go and let be whatever happens.
Okay. Fascinating.
So,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah.
Awesome. Really cool.
Yeah, and so as far as creativity and yoga and meditation, like they're really essential things to creativity. If you are living a life where you just never stop and you're going from one thing to the next, there is not any space for creativity to come in. And so not only those moments of Shavasana rest and meditation, but just getting the mind calibrated to the idea of pausing sometimes and doing nothing and letting and attracting whatever is ready to come in creatively.
Yes.
It's like training for the creative mind in a way.
Yes, I love that. And maybe like doing nothing is doing something.
Yeah. No, I like that. Even just if you think about it as giving your mind a rest, to just get back at it later at a more healthy, angles. Pretty
Right.
important. Yeah.
It will be ready to
Nice.
come back.
Yeah, totally. Very good. And so you've been teaching since '99, right? You've been doing your yoga practices.
Yes.
Yeah. And then you're still doing that today, correct?
I still am, and it was my primary career for a long time until the past 5 to 7 years is when I started doing this nonprofit with this choir, and so I had a yoga studio for 10 years. I owned one in Arizona, and that was a big part of my life throughout. For that whole time, it really it took a lot of my life energy, and it was a great project, and I'm really glad that it's not my project anymore, because it's a lot to own a yoga studio, and people don't see it. They think you're teaching yoga all the time, and it's like you're doing everything but teaching yoga. There's so much behind the scenes to do, and so now I work at a wonderful studio in Point Reyes called Point Reyes Yoga, which is owned by a musician, MC Yogi, and his wife, Amanda Giacomini, who also does if you've ever driven to West Marin and you've seen the Buddhas around on murals, she has this project called 10,000 Buddhas that she's building these beautiful murals around the country and around the world.
It's amazing.
Yeah, she's a wonderful artist, visual artist. And so I'm doing all my teaching there, and I did actually manage the studio for almost 10 years, but I recently let go of that, and I actually let go of some of my weekly classes too. I'm down to teaching one yoga class a week, plus I teach yoga teacher trainings, and I teach an immersion, a 3-day immersion called the Art of Yogic Chant, which is a new thing I'm pretty excited about. That's merging my two worlds of yoga and music.
Tell us about that.
Let's get into that. Yeah.
Yeah. The Art of Yogic Chant. It's I mean, I considered calling it something like Chant 101 or something, but I have a little bit of a different twist on it that I'm not really spending much energy in these groups on Vedic chanting, and a lot of yoga trainings in chant focus a lot on Vedic chanting, which is a lot of recitation, memorization. Mm-hmm. It works great for younger minds. I tend to be more with like middle-aged and older people, and certainly memorization can feel worthwhile, and it takes longer, and really the heart opening is where the juice of this is for me. Mm-hmm. And the juice of using the voice and singing and not being quite so like scientific or rigid about it. It's really getting more into the emotional qualities of what is yogic chant, as far as like what does it do for the heart, what does it do for our different states of mind, and how can it be a meditation tool and not so much just like a discipline tool. Because as we get older, we don't need that discipline as much. It's good for younger people. So yeah, we do in the yoga chant training. It's a synthesis of bija mantras, which is the just very simple, like a bija. The word means seed, and you're getting into sounds like Om is the most well-known bija mantra, and then there's all these other different sounds that have different effects that we chant in different ways that are used to elicit different meditative states. Mm-hmm. We work with those quite a bit, and then we expand it into kirtan and raga singing, and there's lots to do there. Yeah. and some improvisational singing.
Mm-hmm. And the bija singing, I think that they correspond to the chakras. Is that right? Like Om.
Some of them do, and then there's other bijas that don't necessarily correspond to a chakra, but more just bring, like you can do bijas to calm yourself. Okay. You can do bijas to energize yourself. Mm-hmm. And so like the ha, the H ones are more energizing. Right. And also just the vibrational element of yogic chant. There's just some magic of vibration that it's amazing to get into that state where you are able to create a vibration that affects yourself. It's kind of this, like we go through this cultural situation we're in where we think music comes from outside, and vibration is something that we have to go seek out, and to establish a yogic chant practice and to be able to bring vibration into your own practice and use your voice that way. It gets people out of that insecurity about their voice big time. It's like, oh, this is not just something that's supposed to sound pretty. Like some of these sounds are not pretty, and they have a different purpose.
Yeah.
It's
So there's a transformational purpose.
Yeah.
So you're noticing something that's happening inside of you, and you may not be enjoying that, and you're wanting to create change, and so you would take on a particular practice. You'd say, okay, well, for this, maybe kind of like medicine.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Another piece of the yogic chant training, a big piece, is this idea of devotion, which is what is infused in the whole kirtan world of devoting what you're singing to something larger than yourself. Mm-hmm. Nice. Which in our culture of stars or famous people being the musicians, it's very refreshing to come into this world of kirtan where people are doing it out of their hearts, out of love for someone else, something else, some idea, and it's not all about being the best or anything like that. Yeah. So, and it's such a foreign idea to us to like, especially because many in today's world didn't grow up with religion, like church has become not cool anymore. And And so to even like think about God a lot, or to think about anything that you'd want to devote yourself or devote your singing to, we've lost that as a culture. And people have some, maybe triggers. If they did grow up with religion, it's often like they don't want to, they're moving away from that as adults. And so to have the Indian-inspired devotion come in, that's like, oh, okay, I don't have to have there's something that can open my heart in a devotional way that doesn't trigger all my childhood stuff.
Right. Yes.
It's from a different culture, so it's actually safer.
Right.
Yes, and that is a
Got it.
blessing,
Yeah.
a well needed bit of nourishment,
Yeah.
to say the least. So, is there a way that you use language to communicate in a way where you're not using the word God to trigger people, or how do you approach that with people, both in the kirtans and in yoga class? And like, do you discuss a concept of God? Is that a word that you do not use? It's an interesting topic. I think.
Well, in the Indian music and the kirtan world, there's not a strong correlation to one God, first of all. And so these different deities or gods that are brought into the songs are can really be thought of as representations of a certain kind of quality of humanity or personality, or whatever you want to think of it as. And it's been a journey for me, because I'm like, it feels a little removed to me. I still struggle with it. Like, I didn't grow up Hindu, and I don't necessarily, I've never become Hindu. I've changed my name from Debbie, is the name I grew up with, to Devi, which means, it kind of means goddess, or it's kind of it's a female sort of title before the name. But I changed it from Debbie to Devi, mostly just because I liked the sound of the name, and I liked the energy of it, and I like it a lot better than the name Debbie, which is sort of like this, happy, joy name. That
you have a great blog on your website about it.
That's right. If
with
you want to
little
see my
Debbie
little
cupcake,
my little blog entry about why I changed my name a year and a half ago. So I use this name Devi, and but I really haven't like fully taken on the Hindu religion. And that's a beautiful thing about yoga and yogic chanting, is that you can really sort of take what works for you without having to like take on a whole new.
Subscribe to an entire.
The fact that there even are different deities, that you can just choose the ones that resonate with you. And
maybe think of it as the qualities of, as you mentioned, of the deity. I do remember actually that I was teaching a workshop at a conference once a long time ago, and there were some people that were Christians that really had issues around actually chanting, thinking that they were worshiping, false idols in these deities, and there actually has been a lot of controversy in the Christian community. I mean, not obviously everybody, but just because of this idea of worshiping false idols. But I love the idea that anybody can do this, and that it's a devotional practice, and that we can devote ourselves to a particular quality or energy in it, and it may be called this particular name, but.
Yeah, and I guess I try to think of it as not worshiping anyone, but instead just awakening the qualities of that deity in ourselves. Like when we chant Shiva, where those are kind of the more darker, moody chants typically, and so we're getting in touch with that part of ourselves that wants to welcome change and transformation. That's what Shiva is all about, opening up to transformation.
Yes. Yeah. So, Devi, I'm curious, what kind of transformation are you going through right now? Speaking of transformation, I think that it's kind of just the nature of life, change. So,
there's a big question. So, I have been. I had a big breakup 4 years ago, just over 4 years ago, and it was with my partner I'd been with for 12 years, who was my musical, kind of my musical foundation in a lot of ways. I had my childhood musical foundation, but when I was 30, I got together with a man who is an incredible musician, and he is the reason I started singing harmonies. We sang incredible harmonies together. We still do. We still occasionally sing together, and he was my teacher for many years, and we went through a lot together. We moved to California together. We met in Tucson, and then we had a breakup that was really difficult. It wasn't my choice, and so that kind of put me into this cesspool of my self-worth went way down, and I wasn't doing a lot of good self-care in that relationship. And well, I don't blame any of it on him, but that I really, he was the creative one, and I was the support person, and I was the administrator, and I was managing his music business in an unpaid capacity, because as you may know, trying to perform for a living is what do we call it?
Nearly impossible.
I don't know if they've come up with a word for that one yet. So
Yeah.
I'll wait on that.
But we were trying to make that work for him, and he had a body of work that he was trying to get out into the world, and I put a lot of energy into that, and so I was in a support role. I wasn't thriving as a creative person at all. I didn't see that at that time.
Right.
I saw that he was the creative one, and I had more administrative skills and blah blah blah.
Sure.
So yeah, I went into a really dark place for about a year after that, and then what started happening was, I also lost 20 pounds, which was because I just couldn't eat. In the depression, but anyway, I came out with this new body that was able to that had way more energy. I had,
Wow, all right.
yeah, I had a lot more energy. I had in yoga, I was way more flexible all of a sudden. I was like, wow, it's 10 years ago. I've just removed 10 years, and I started dancing. I started finding improvisational dance, which was something that was so needed for me, to be able to find this place of building up energy, building up Kundalini energy, and sharing it with other people, and having a social life too, because I really had gotten into this place in my hometown, in my small town where I live, where I was very insulated, where I only really interacted with people I worked with people I taught yoga to. I didn't leave town much, and it was places that were over the hill, we called it. The towns that were 30, 40 minutes away felt really far away to me, and then I started to realize wow, they're only 30, 40 minutes away, and I can just start having a whole life outside of this small town. And so dance became a big door for me to find just more self-development work, a lot of self-growth and relationship work, and working on my own, being able to become this creative person in me that has been wanting to come out, that was sort of stifled and insecure and not feeling good enough.
There's a little demonstration of how our shadow, how we, our projections on our partners can be actually this positive thing that we are not seeing within ourselves.
Interesting.
Yeah, and getting thrown back to ourselves like that, and so okay, this thing that I loved about this person, how can I develop that in myself? Which I've actually found, as a person who used to have a lot of crushes, that one of the tools that I've used as a kind of a personal thing, but one of the tools that I've used is actually what is it that I'm seeing in that person that I might want to develop more of in myself?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and I see that in not just myself, but other people who are in partnerships with great musicians, is that they were attracted to that because they're musical people themselves, but suddenly the other one is the creative one. And so now I'm in a new partnership with a wonderful man, and I'm the creative one, and I don't want to be that force for him. Like, I really want to bring him along with me because he also is musical and creative, and sort of on a new path of discovering that for more deeply himself.
Wow, that's beautiful. And you guys have been together a year now.
Yes,
And,
just over a year.
I've seen on Facebook, because listeners, that's how Davy and I have actually just stay in quote touch. Actually, since the last time we saw each other was 2 years ago at that Rhiannon workshop. But, I kind of know what's going on in your life, and, I comment here and let you know that I see what's going on. And it's beautiful to see, this new relationship blossoming. And
yeah, and we've just recently, this past week, gotten engaged, and that's
God.
exclusive
Really?
info.
Wow.
That is not on
Heard it
Facebook
here
yet.
first.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I gotta in post put in like a cool little like jingle, like happy music time for that when you said that. I'll put in something.
Totally.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, that's so incredible.
What else can I say about transformational work? And transformation is that the more I've carried a lot of, like, I am a singer. I'm a natural singer, and playing instruments has been like edgy for me. Like it hasn't been the easiest thing for me to translate what's in my mind to an instrument. But I play instruments, and especially in my long-term relationship with a musician who had like just incredible instrumental chops on multiple instruments, I always felt a lot lesser than when it came to instrumentation. And now to be doing more work on the heart and heart opening, and to just enjoy the simplicity of how I am able to express the transformation I'm going through in my voice, and the choice of songs that I make in the repertoire, and in leading others in song, which is the thing I love to do. That doesn't require high level anything. That is like, the more accessible it is for people, the better. Really.
Totally.
How do you find the pieces that you're going to bring to the choir?
All over the place. I go to singing gatherings, and I write down names of things if I like what someone's doing, or I record it if they're okay with that. And YouTube is an incredible resource.
Oh yeah, right.
Yes.
You can spend a lot of time driving and going to campouts and gatherings, or you can sit on YouTube for half a day and learn a whole lot. And I have this love-hate relationship with the whole recording mechanism of music. It's like the moment you start making music that someone likes, they start recording it, and it's like it takes it so much out of the moment that. In one way, I'm like trying to be like cool and like, not old school, and not tell people that I don't want it recorded. But in the other time, it's like, well, this is like an in the moment thing that's not meant to be. Like, you just totally change the energy of this thing by turning on a recording device.
Davy, what I wanted to ask you was, how do you... you put out this ad a while ago. I saw that you wanted a director, and I thought, oh man, that would be so much fun. But then I thought, oh my gosh, it's, how do you record? You said that you record each person's part, each group's part.
Yes.
And so it's not really written out, but they get to have the recordings to learn their parts.
Yeah.
But how do you, so who did those arrangements? Like, if you've got a new song, do you just figure out an arrangement yourself?
If sometimes they're already arranged, like depending on where you hear it, or if you hear a good recording. And I'm pretty good at, and I imagine you would be too, at hearing the different parts without actually needing it written out or recorded separately. And so if you are able to do that, if you have the ear for that, then you're good. It's just becomes just more of a scientific process of like getting each part sort of transcribed in whatever way in your head or on paper, however, whatever your system is, and then sitting down with some recording software. I use Logic, but you can even use GarageBand for this. So I'll have 4 tracks: the soprano, alto, tenor, and bass, and I'll provide on the website which we call our song portal. There's one of the even mix of how we want the whole song to sound, and then there's one where the soprano part is there and all the other parts are way down in volume, so you still have the context.
Oh, cool.
And so we put out same thing for the others, and we put 5 files out for
Really neat.
for that purpose.
How fun.
And it's such a wonderful way to do the music rather separate from the traditional choir model, which is all paper with your binder, and that's something that Tim and I we founded this choir with. It was inspired by Tim, this model who comes from the bluegrass tradition of nothing is written down in the bluegrass tradition, just like jazz is the same, I guess. And there's so much more engagement between the musicians when that's happening, and so much more energy exchange when it's like the music is not that piece of paper, it's the sound that's happening between people. And call and response is the natural way for us to learn music, or hearing it and repeating it back. And so we're going back on all these centuries of civilization that were started transcribing music, and we're like, let's go back a few hundred years and go back to before that happened.
That's a fantastic idea.
And so we have to choose songs that can be taught that way. So typically it's like a song with a chorus that's easy to remember, and then verses that soloists will take on the responsibility of memorizing and learning.
Gotcha. Nice.
Well, I know that you're teaching a series. Would you tell us the name of the series? And then I'd love to actually just listen to a bit of a clip of one of the MP3s that you sent.
Yeah, so my fall choir series that's starting next week is called Songs of Death, Grief, and Renewal. And this is a relatively new thing we're doing with the choir, is to have a theme. We used to just do like 5 songs per season. We call a season, it's like a series. It's 6 weeks long. And we have 2 chapters of the choir. So when I am in session, I do twice a week, one time in Point Reyes and one time in Stinson Beach. And the 2 chapters work on the same music, and then they come together at the end for a performance. And our performance this time is going to be 2 performances at the West Marin Day of the Dead, the ceremony, or I don't know what to call them, ceremony, festival. And they're both really sweet events that are going to be really community infused, and
Neat.
and we're gonna, and they're reverent events. You know, people really participate in bringing their photos and mementos of loved ones to the altar. And my plan is, as I get more comfortable with doing like group process through my yogic chant work, I really want to bring more of that into the choir season that I'm leading. We're going to be hearing people's stories of their losses, whoever wants to share. I know already that some of the people who are going to be joining us have some big shifts in their lives that have happened. And for me, my big breakup, even though it wasn't a death, it felt like a death in some ways. I went through a grieving process and a huge loss, and that's where my interest in this work comes from.
Yeah, I was going to ask that, but you just answered my question.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's September 16th through the 24th I have here.
Yeah, so we start September 16th in Stinson Beach. That's the Monday night. And then for people doing the Point Reyes group, that starts the following night, September 17th.
Cool. So let's listen to a clip.
Yes.
All right.
Hang on. Here we go.
I'm on my way to Canaan land. I'm on my way, glory, hallelujah. I'm on my way.
sister to go with me. I asked my sister, won't you go with me? 'Cause I'm on my way, glory, hallelujah, I'm on my way. I'm on my way to Canaan land. I'm on my way to Canaan land. I'm on my way to Canaan land. I'm on my way, glory, hallelujah, I'm on my way.
So that song was titled Canaan Land. And did you arrange that one? Did you guys arrange that song?
I helped Tim arrange it, Tim Weed, and he's the at the time we did that song, he was the only director of the choir, and then I started to. I was his co-director, so we worked together, but he was kind of the main arranger and musical person, and then it took me a while to, after we had our breakup, to decide that I was feeling confident enough about doing it myself, because we have a big group. We have 40 people to sometimes 50 people in Point Reyes, and so I had to get my confidence up for that, and I did that. I actually on yoga retreats down. I started leading smaller groups on yoga retreats, and I realized, like, oh my God, I love doing this. This is my calling to lead singing groups on my own, like to not just as his sidekick. And he has his own way of doing it, and I realized I get to do it my way.
Yes,
Like,
totally.
how awesome is that? Yeah. So that recording, that's just the two of us plus a bass singer, our friend Todd Pickering, singing all the parts. And so we make it sound like a choir by tripling each of the harmony parts. So you're hearing 12 voices.
Nice chorusing effect.
Yeah.
From all that. Very cool. Those harmonies gave me a very like Moses Hogan vibe, like those really like battle sort of tunes almost. It was very primal in a really cool way.
Nice.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, so that Canaan land, like the way that fits into the theme is like Canaan. It was an actual biblical place, but to go to Canaan land, to cross over the River Jordan, has become kind of symbolic of going to heaven. So it's like this. I'm ready for death, and I'm on the right path, and so that song could be interpreted that way. It could be interpreted other ways, but it's kind of like, I'm not. It also can be kind of a transformational theme, like I'm not gonna just stay here doing the same stuff anymore. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go find the better path, and you can come with me too if you want to.
Yeah, really
Beautiful.
cool.
Especially when 50 people are all singing it at once.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you ever find that people like really start tearing up and have a hard time singing through it?
Yeah. Oh yeah, we have a lot of emotional responses to doing this, and Ann Cushman was a member of our choir, and she's a spirit rock meditation teacher, and she is still a member. She's going to be coming back this fall, and she wrote a blog about her experience, and she hadn't sung in quite a while, and just the experience of being on this, she calls it like a river of voices, and how she came into it with insecurity, not knowing if she'd be like shamed or like kicked out or something because she didn't feel confident about her voice, and she found like this welcoming thing where not only did she feel like her voice wasn't sticking out in a bad way, but she felt like a contributor to it, and that's, wow, we're like all in this together, and these people next to me are helping me, and I'm helping them, and it is a very emotive kind of experience.
That's beautiful. What an incredible offering to give to the community and to yourself.
Yeah, and there's something about my voice, I think, when I sing, that people always want to sing along with me, even if they don't know the song. And I think it's maybe because I sing with very little vibrato. I sing in a really clear way. I have pretty good volume. I don't know what it is. I'm just guessing. But there's something about my voice that makes people want to sing along, and I want to welcome that. And so I think that's why I've fallen into this in the circuitous path that I have, that I feel like this is my gift to give, that I can really sing these parts for people. I have a good mind for 4-part vocal harmony. I just can memorize it like pretty easy. I don't have to read notes or anything all the time. I'm just, I walk into the class like knowing the parts. And
That's great.
yeah.
Neat. Wow.
And that song that we listened to is kind of typical of our chorus. The chorus is the same every time around, and a verse that a soloist will sing. And they're pretty easy to remember solo verses too. So that one's really friendly for people who are maybe venturing into soloing for the first time, which we love to see. We don't always just want to have the best soloist. Like, it's not about sounding great. It's about people stepping into new territory and being supported by the group. And I love when that person who's never sung in front of a group takes a leap in rehearsal and does it. And we all know that doing that in front of 40 or so people, even in rehearsal, it's not even performance time yet. That's big. And sometimes they crack a little bit. They can't do it. Their voice doesn't come out the way they want. And we just welcome it so much because they tried, and it's not, and it's almost like a given that the first time you try it, your voice is not going to come out right, and so you have to know that the first time, and then the second time maybe it'll come out a little more right.
I just love that. And I'm sure that when people do that in something as scary for some people as singing, and you're really going to your edge in front of other people to do something like that, that kind of experience can be, you can connect that, you can use that to support yourself in other ways in your life when you're wanting to do a scary thing. Well, if I could sing in front of people, then I could do this too. You know what I mean? Because I think for all of us, I don't know anybody that doesn't have some fear. It's just, I think the nature of being alive is, some things. Some people are maybe more fearless in some way. Some people are big adventurers, like physical adventures, and yet they may be very scared of intimacy. Like I remember actually, just a little side thing here, but I remember watching a rock climbing documentary on speed climbers, and I just happened to be really interested in rock climbing, but but it was really interesting because I think somebody that was interviewing one of these guys said, well, has this fearlessness translated into other areas of your life, And he said very clearly that it did not translate into his relationships, that he remained very scared to reveal himself emotionally, although that's pretty brave to reveal that in a documentary. So
sounds like he's doing the work. Just just saying that.
But I think if you consciously call up that memory, like I can do this. Anyway, what a beautiful thing that you're doing.
Yeah, and what you're saying, that it's a gift to yourself to take that risk and to make yourself bolder for taking other risks. It's also a gift to everyone else in the group and in the room. If you take that leap, whether you succeed or fail, not that there's even like such a thing as succeeding or failing in this environment, but if you are willing to take that risk, and sometimes when people can see how scared you are, it's even more effective. It's a gift to them because it helps to embolden them too.
That's a wonderful point to bring forward.
Yeah, that's been part of my transformational path. Is like I've been in life often, even though I lead groups and lead singing groups, I'm often not the one to like stick out and take a risk in different environments where I feel less confident. And I've really learned that that's a big edge for me to be that person and to be embarrassed, and that it's really good work to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely, boy. Yeah.
And you guys doing jazz music know a lot about that, huh?
Oh my God. Well, just, I think I've mentioned in a past episode, but, just going back to school at the age of 52, and I mean, growing up playing classical music, but not being able to play a thing without music in front of me. And then being around, 18, 19-year-old boys, like 30, and pretty much being the only female. And
Wow.
I mean, my hands literally, when we had to improvise in, the second class or whatever, they would shake literally about an inch back and forth. And I think that, I was probably most embarrassed. Of course, I was embarrassed about sounding terrible because this is kind of a different environment than, well, anyway. But I was also just as embarrassed about being embarrassed. And seeing, letting people see how embarrassed I was. So I appreciate that comment too, that, when somebody sees that you're scared and embarrassed, that it's a gift to them. So I'm going to kind of just turn that around.
Turn it around. I like that.
Yeah, definitely.
So I know that you're also into some physical stuff outside of just music and the choirs and whatnot. I wanted to touch on that a little bit because I'm kind of a physical junkie too sometimes.
Okay.
So I was kind of curious what you're interested in, what it is you like to do outside and some sports or activities or anything like that you're interested in.
Oh, it's kind of all over the place, and I like it that way.
Yeah, keep it
It used to
interesting.
be a lot of yoga, a lot of different kinds of yoga, and now I still like all kinds of yoga, and I've also become a swimming junkie. I swim in Tamales Bay.
Oh, lucky. Oh my God.
Oh, it's so wonderful such a wonderful place to swim, and I've gotten used to the cold water. I do not like to swim with a wetsuit. In fact, I don't have a wetsuit, and I don't even like swimming with a bathing suit. So I go down there early morning when you
By
can
yourself?
Oh,
no,
get
no
away
swim
with-
buddy?
I don't have. There's a group that I sometimes swim with, but and they're called the Mermaids, and they go at 6 a.m. But I often am not awake for 6 a.m.
Yeah.
But there's something about just getting, like, the water's so cold at first, and then something happens to your body where it's like, oh, this doesn't feel cold anymore. And there's this threshold you passed where it's like, I'm there. And
I know that.
Yeah.
Does that happen every time? Is it pretty jarring every time you go in at first?
Yep.
Yep.
It's really,
That's crazy.
there was one day this summer where Tamales Bay felt
Okay.
refreshing because it was so hot out.
Right.
And other than that, it's about a once or twice a year occurrence when it's just not warm water around here.
So is there like a dock or is there a beach?
It's a beach.
It's a beach.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So
And
I
you're not a-
swim.
You're not afraid, I just have to ask that, you're not afraid of going by yourself, like swimming in the water by because I was always taught that you had to have a swim buddy with you in case something happened.
There's some fear. I've heard about people having heart attacks in the water, and then that's happened to someone recently, and they didn't make it. And I've seen seals in that water, and when I was swimming more in the winter time, who were like, "You do not belong here," and we're doing some kind of breeding thing. That there was aggressive seal, like, surrounding me, and I just got out of there. I was like, "Whoa!"
Wow.
But I felt that energy. I tuned into it, and there's not sharks in the bay. It's not deep enough. So if there were sharks, I'd be more scared of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, swimming is one of my things, and then hiking. I do quite a bit of hiking and running, like alternating running and hiking, and acro yoga. My new fiance. I get to say fiance now. He and I do a lot of acro yoga.
What is acro yoga?
Acro yoga is the combination of acrobatics and yoga, where mostly he's on his back in an L shape, they call it, with his legs up in the air, and his feet and hands are supporting me in various ways,
Right.
getting to like show off and do yoga poses. And it requires a lot of strength from him, a lot of stability. And for me, I have to have quite a bit of core strength and balance as well doing these things. And I am not super duper flexible as far as the yoga teacher realm of things. I've actually been, whenever I'm in a room of yoga teachers, I'm the least flexible one, but that's okay. It's not about performance, the acro yoga. It's about connection and working together and you know, me being bossy and then apologizing for being too bossy. That's
Right.
kind of sums up a big part of our
sounds fun.
relationship. And there's more physical stuff. What else is there? There's cycling and I can't think of anything
Paddling.
else. Right now. Oh yes, there's paddleboarding.
Oh, you paddleboard?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, sweet.
I like paddleboarding better than kayaking. And
Okay.
the sitting position doesn't work very well for me.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
Me too.
Yeah.
I like the standing position.
Did you find paddleboarding difficult at first, or?
No, it's easy. I mean, if you're in a wind, it's like I don't like it when it's windy at all, which is tough on Tomales Bay because it's windy a lot.
Okay.
But I just like to go out in the morning, and it's really not a very vigorous thing. It's more just like floating and enjoying. Like carrying the board to the water is maybe the hardest thing you do
Right.
when you're not doing it in wind.
Very fascinating. Sounds like you like water a lot too, like water sports. And
Yeah, well, I live in this beautiful place in Inverness that's near the water there, and I drive by a big stretch of Tomales Bay every day, and so it's hard to forget that water is there, and it
Yeah.
just infuses itself into my mind, like, gotta get in the water today, gotta get on the water today, gotta do something, rather than just drive by it
Right.
Yeah.
between work
Absolutely.
and home.
Man, yeah. I wonder. Yeah, that'd probably change my life too. Honestly, if I was living next to the water like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's great.
What kind of physical stuff do you do?
I'm big on lifting and I'm big on hiking's fun, but I don't get to do that a lot. And just walking is really fun, and then longboarding,
Okay.
that sort of thing. Yeah. Snowboarding's huge.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I love doing that. Yeah, and then just, your basic like tennis and volleyball and all the small little ball sports locally whenever
Okay.
we can get that going on. So that's kind of my big thing. But yeah, lifting and snowboarding when I have money to pay for snowboarding. That's sort of my thing. Yeah.
I just learned how to ski
Nice.
a year and a half ago.
I'm sure that was fun. Yeah.
It wasn't really fun, but I did it.
Oh,
It's not really fun to learn to ski in your 40s. But
right. Yeah. Yeah.
My husband did. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he's doing great.
but once I got the hang of it a bit, it got funner.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
Right.
Snowboarding's the same way. Starting out, like, it was so hard. It wasn't really fun to learn, but once I went like 4 times, I was like, okay, now this is actually enjoyable finally.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's how I feel about jazz.
Yeah. You have to do it 1,000 times. It's like, all right.
8 hours a day for a few years, and I mean, sometimes slowly, but
Yeah.
hey.
8 hours a day, huh?
Oh my God, the first couple of years. Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah, that's why I had to quit teaching. Well,
Wow.
kind of. Yeah, multiple reasons, but yeah.
Sure. I don't know if I've ever spent 8 hours a day practicing. Like, that makes me go crazy. Personally, I need to take it in small chunks, repetitive chunks.
Right. Well, I wasn't sitting for the entire 8 hours.
Okay, good.
No,
Yeah.
I would have to come and take, you take a 10-minute break or whatever. Or usually I'd be, I could go for probably 2 or 3 hours without noticing, like, what in the world time it is.
Right.
The time would pass pretty quickly.
Wow.
Well, depending on what skill I was working on. There were some things that I could only take 10 minutes of, honestly. And my piano teacher would say, can you only spend 10 minutes on that? Can't you go for 2 hours? I'm like, no, because I'm about ready to pull out my hair. And I know that that's not useful. So I'm going to take a little break and calm myself and come back so that I can
Great
be
point.
calm and effective, Practice.
Yeah.
Practice techniques.
Wow.
Yeah. So is there anything about practicing, the topic of practicing, whether it's yoga or, even just how that fits in with, practicing yoga fits in with practicing music or
Practicing anything.
teaching, practicing anything.
Yeah.
Practicing is not something I feel particularly good at.
Right. I think that's the point, right?
I'm very inconsistent. I don't have any like regular routine or times, and I'm working on that. But in general, when it comes to music, my best times are absolutely in the morning, like to not have to interact with anyone. And this is something I'm kind of negotiating with my new partner. Is like we don't live together, and we're at some point going to be married and living together. And I really need sometimes to be able to wake up, not interact, and go have musical space or creative space or nothing space, because that is always when music comes to me, or when learning comes to me, when I want to get a new song down. That's almost always when it happens. Maybe often it's sometimes something that came to me in the night that I maybe will record on my phone, like a little idea or something.
Yeah. So really carving out that time for yourself is helpful.
Having a life that allows that, and I've been blessed for the past 4 years, like living in this incredibly quiet place where I don't have to work really hard to make creative time, and I don't have a lot of sound disturbance. I just can do it when it flows and when it comes. And I also find that having work in music, like having the choir and having various song circles and things that I'm leading, that makes me work a lot more. Like if it's just for myself, the practice time is harder to create. But if I have a work project coming up and a deadline, I have to set a deadline for myself, then I will make the time. And also having musical friends. And I'm in a duo right now, a vocal duo that hasn't performed yet, but we get together every week. And I know that when I'm about to get together with her, that I want to review everything we've been working on and maybe have a new song to bring to the table or something. So having other people that you're making music with to keep you accountable is a huge one to inspire practice.
Yes.
And then the other thing is that when there is musical inspiration, whether it's writing a song or learning a new song, I've learned to seize on it in that moment if I possibly can, and not say, oh, let me do this thing first. Let me get this to-do out of the way.
Yeah.
And I learned that from Peter Rowan. I got to meet and hang out with Peter Rowan once, and that was a real gift he gave to me, like, because he's a prolific songwriter.
Okay.
I am not. But he said, like, when you have a song idea coming, that you have 15 minutes to write that song. He says, you might flesh it out. You probably will, like, improve it and flesh it out, but you have 15 minutes to get the egg of that song or down, because then after that, it's gone.
Yeah, I think he's right. Completely. Which is frustrating.
Yeah.
I know. Almost been late to class a couple times because of that problem. Because I'm busy writing something and it's like, I can't go right now. I have to do this.
Good for you, Daniel.
No, it's not good for me. I think I get some weird looks from the teachers sometimes showing up. Yeah.
That's the thing about music. I mean, what do we do when we make music? We play, quote unquote, play music. And it's playing to a lot of people in our lives who especially aren't musicians, and to significant others or whatever, that it's very hard to carve that time out with the people in our lives. There's always something more important to do than make music. You can always say that excuse. You can always say, oh, but we have this thing to deal with. We have this thing to do. We have so many things to do. And to realize that if you allow that to happen, you will never make time for music. That there's just to know that there's always going to be something more important than music, unless you don't allow there to be something more important than making music.
That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, and I've spoken to different couples. It's such an interesting thing with, couples and music, and I know somebody, a very successful musician, a sax player, who said that his wife just couldn't stand to hear him practice. And he ended up getting divorced from this woman, and he's so happy that he gets to practice. And then for me, on the other hand, my husband, like, it just so happens that he is he's just a music lover to the core, and he loves jazz, and we kind of fell in love over actually Kinda Blue 27 years ago or whatever it was. And but he actually likes to listen to me practice, and sometimes will actually ask me before he goes to work. He leaves at 7:30. Would I play the piano for him before he goes? So I feel really lucky, especially having grown up with a very critical father. That so that is like a huge blessing in my life. He will sometimes just come downstairs like a cat laying there in the sunshine. It's like, you just want to like listen. And I'm not playing anything great. I'm just practicing sometimes. But I can't even say how grateful I am for that, because I definitely would not be where I am. If I did not have that kind of support, honestly. So yeah, like every couple probably has their different challenges.
Yeah.
And carving out time and making it important in your life. Sometimes I feel like maybe I get some judgment for that, because I do make it pretty important, but I don't
you
know.
seem to do a good job of that.
That's hard sometimes to do.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah.
I guess I don't really have a lot of other people pulling on me, so I don't have kids, and but I think carving out time for ourselves, whether it's music or for self-care, is probably hard for everybody, and just kind of the nature of it.
Yeah.
But so important.
Yeah, and I think it's important for each of us to know what our system is. For some people, saying I'm going to practice at this time every day for an hour or whatever, or every week, it works for them. And others jumping on inspiration and motivation when it comes. And for some people, morning is good. For some people, evening is good. I think you need to kind of know, rather than like trying to fit someone else's formula, know what your own formula is.
Yes, good point. Yeah. I think there's nothing that's kind of more discouraging than trying to come up with a plan for oneself to accomplish something and failing over and over again to meet our own, structure. I think just that's just a whole topic in and of itself. That could be another great podcast, actually. But yeah. Davy, is there anything that we haven't asked you yet that you'd like to talk about?
So, what's coming up is the Songs of Death, Grief, and Renewal. And so it's open, singers can join starting September 16th and 17th. And then to hear us, come to the Point Reyes Day of the Dead ceremony on October 26th, and then the Spalinas Day of the Dead, where an incredible altar gets built, and it takes over the whole Bolinas Community Center, and we're going to sing as kind of a blessing to that altar. And in both of these events, the Latino community comes out in force, and they make food that's for sale or donation. And they're wonderful community events and multicultural gatherings, too. It's a really nice thing about these particular events.
Wonderful. Thank you. And we can find more information on your website. And your website is devidaly.com.
Yes, I have too many websites. DeviDaly.com is my personal one, DeviDaly. And then the choir's website is westmarinchoir.org. And then there's also the nonprofit that runs the choir, which we do some other music programs through, and that's called Sound Orchard, soundorchard.org.
Great. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, well, I think that's going to be it for the podcast today. Devi, once again, thank you so much for coming out and joining us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been really a joy.
Yes.
Pleasure.
Yeah. And we'd just like to tell listeners that you can go to our website for, I think Podbean is probably the place to start, correct?
Meaningful musical conversations.podbean.com.
Yeah.
And subscribe to the podcast. And yes, feel free to share, and also leave comments. We'd love to, love to connect with each and every one of you that leaves a comment.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and you can check us out on, we're also on iTunes, and we'll have some YouTube coming up as well, so we'll link those when we get those as well.
And Apple Music and Spotify and just all your usual channels.
Yeah. Thank you all. We'll see you soon.
Thank
Take care.
you. Bye.